Everyone's here tonight, and we want to welcome you who are online as well. Let me do a technology check. Can you and we hear me? Engineer? It's all good?
I'm just hearing you through the air in this room.
Excellent, excellent.
It's better to see if you.
Well, tonight we want to introduce our treasurer for the Metro Atlanta group, Justin Brightharp. Justin is a born and raised Georgian. Growing up here in Gwinnett County, he went to Georgia State University, where he made the decision to go into sustainability to promote public health with a degree in geosciences. He has worked in clean transportation, worked on transportation electrification. Justin is pursuing his master's in environmental management at Duke University through the Duke Environmental Leadership Program. Through this Duke program, Justin went to Colombia for spring break, learning about sustainable development through policy, conservation, and cultural lenses. Welcome, Justin.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. So as Max said, I'm Justin Brightharp. I am a student through the Duke Environmental Leadership Program, which is it's a master's program for working professionals. So I still work full-time and go to school full-time. So for the spring semester at Duke, usually there are classes that allow you to travel during spring break. And one of these is sustainable development in Colombia. So from March 7th through March 15th, I was in Colombia with 5 other classmates and our professor, learning about what are some key takeaways that we can pull from around sustainable development. And of course, not every place is perfect, but there are some key things that I think could be valuable for here in Atlanta and in Georgia. So just some quick facts about Colombia. We were in Bogota, 10 million people. And then we were also in Santa Marta, which is on the Caribbean coast. I do not have the population on that one, but I probably should have. But I'm going to go through some photos of just what what we took in while we were there. I'm going to go through some of my notes to explain some of the background. So some of these pictures are, this is a mural in Bogota. We thought it was that plant that you squeeze the shampoo. It's like shampoo, but it was not. But this was in a area about 2 hours outside of Bogota, where Lake Guatavita, which I'll show that in a little bit. And then this third picture is in Tayrona National Park, which is in like the northeastern corner of Colombia. So a little background: 7 people, 8 days, 9 modes of travel, and 43.15 miles walked. So one day we did 10 miles. It was something. So, and of course, I'm going to give you what are the 9 modes of travel. So we did, what I did: electric taxi, shuttle, plane, cable car, a mountain train twice, walking, motorbiking, horseback riding, and boat. So just about any mode of transportation you can think of, ideally without gas. I think the only one, of course, the plane, I guess, but I think the only one was the motorbike and the boat. So first off, this is a photo of Bogota from Monserrate, which is so Bogota is 8,600 8,600 feet above sea level. Montserrat was another 2,000, so we were over 10,000 feet above sea level. So the altitude sickness was real. Had no idea what it was at first until I realized, I was like, I have a headache. Why do I have a headache? I was like, I'm drinking water. That's what it is. So this mountain was very particular because there are 2 churches that are at the tops of them that kind of cascade into a valley. And the indigenous people who were originally in Bogota, mountains in the form of water was very important in the environment, especially, and there was this feminine energy that came from it. So viewing the mountains as a valley as the womb, water being the way of life. And I'll share more about that. But that's what this picture is from. An incredible view. You see how very sprawling Bogota is. This is 10 million people. They do not have highways. It literally took almost 2 hours to get from one end of Bogota to the center. Like, it's horrific, but they are building trains. They are working with a Chinese company to actually build some rail within the city. They have a very extensive bus network. That's actually how the first time I learned about Bogota and the work that they did with Mayor Peñalosa in I think the early 2000s. Made a lot of investment into public transit and walkability. A lot of that is still there, but I'll try to go through some of these pictures. Oh, and also we were told there's some volcanoes back out that way. I think the last eruption in 1985, just for some background. But Bogota is very cloudy. It's about at most 65 degrees. Rains on and off every day.
So that's facing south.
That's facing west. Yeah. And so very stark contrast between Santa Marta, where it was 85 degrees and sunny. So this is one picture I took of the public transit, but you'll see taxis are a lot there. This is one bus here. This is another bus here. But one of the things I liked about it is the bus had its own dedicated lane. So a lot of people ride the public transit. So, but one of the things that stood out is dedicated right-of-ways are very important for public transit, and there's stations like within there. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Boston, but they have a transit line that's basically a bus, but it's its own dedicated with the stations and not necessarily rail. But that's kind of what this is.
They mean they can actually get places quicker by public transit than by traffic.
Yes. So there's the
Like Atlanta.
yes. Yeah, and that was one of the things that really stood out because you have the bus lanes here, and then you also have like bike lanes dedicated, where people are riding bikes, even in the rain, they're doing it. But it was really interesting kind of seeing that. And with the added rail, I think one of the things, because they're not going to build highways, it's really hard to do. To move 10 million people around, you gotta have transit. So mind you, so Bogota is larger than New York City, city limits wise, but the largest city in the country. So these pictures were from some meetings with the UN on the left. So they are doing a big part of the class was focusing on the peace agreement that was signed 10 years ago between the Colombian government and FARC. So a lot of that was in the rural areas. That's what these are. These are development projects that they were working on in the country. So on the western side here, Bogota's like right here, and Santa Marta is up here. Give you some idea. Cartagena is from here for those who down there. And then this is like the Amazon region down here, which is pretty like it's plains and gets into the rainforest, like more tropical rainforest on these sides, and this is more dry rainforest. But these are areas that they are working on. The UN is working really closely on it. It was a 15-year agreement, which is expected to end in 2031. So there's only 5 more years left. There's politics behind it for some folks, because there's this thing of incorporating former paramilitary people into the economy versus do you bring them to justice, basically? What's the right way for justice? Is it incorporating them, or is it, making them go to jail? So within 5 years, that agreement's supposed to be ending, but a big part of that agreement is rural development. It's working with a lot of these communities where the government kind of wasn't there, so their support came from the FARC group. And one of the things that were also talked about was the areas where FARC was protected a lot of the rainforest because they kept it for protection. And now that some of the peace is happening, deforestation is happening more quickly now. So
So what is FARC?
it is I'm sorry, there's actually a term, like it stands for something. It's the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. So in Spanish, the acronym makes more sense, but in English, it will not go that way. But that group is part of where the cultivation of cocaine is coming from. And so it's a, it was a, it's a big, that was a big centerpiece of a lot of the policy conversations and how to utilize the natural resources while still bringing economic opportunity for rural areas who haven't seen it for decades. So balancing conservation with resources. And so that's where St. Mark's was. This was the area where we kind of connected through. But and this picture was at the Ministry of the Environment. I took a picture of the EV charging, but one of the biggest things that came out of that is one, the executive branch is required to create a national development plan every year. So like their first 100 days is creating this national development plan. It's supposed to be approved by their Congress with a budget. So it kind of evolves but biodiversity and rainforest protection was really key in this current administration, but they're not running for reelection. One other thing that's going on in Santa Marta is the Netherlands is working with Colombia on a COP30 plus on renewable energy development. So like not to talk about it, but to actually put something together. So while we were there, there was a Dutch delegation working on that, and that's set for April 24th through the 29th in Santa Marta. And the reason why is this region right here is called Guadalajara. And that's where there's a lot of solar potential, a lot of wind energy potential, and also a lot of mining happens there. And so, but there's also a lot of indigenous cultures. So there's some push and pull against the cultural identity of the area versus the extractive resources. So another interesting aspect of that. So these are some photos of me and my classmates when we were doing some of the meetings. This first photo on the left is with Paulo Lugari. He founded the Gaviotas community, which is 10 hours east of Bogota. It's like this off-the-grid sustainability community developed in the middle of violence with FARC at that time. So he is, I think, in his mid-80s now. But we were just asking more about the community, what are some opportunities there? We talked about hosting an orchestra there. We'll see if that happens. But we went to their community center in Bogota, but kind of saying what they're talking about living truly off grid. It's very similar to like Earthcraft, reutilizing water efficiently, all that kind of things. The second picture was at one of the universities where we were talking. This is with their Center for Rural Development, talking about the peace agreement. I think as of now, only 47% of the agreement has been implemented. So 53% still needs to be done within 5 years. And then this other picture was just us after eating and walking around Bogota. So I have to show like this was a class situation, learning situation. These were some pictures from that mountain I told you about, Monserrate. This was the cable car that we took up to the top on the left. In the middle is coca tea. So this is tea made with coca leaves. So this is not, so to make cocaine, you have to process it. When it's in this form, it's perfectly fine. But it was like 50 degrees, so it was nice and warm. And then the coca leaves you would kind of put in your mouth, and it would help with the altitude sickness. It's supposed to open up your blood vessels to let more oxygen in. But Monserrate is also important because there's a big church on it, so they actually had mass. So this was on Sunday that we went, and this was like a market we were walking through. Another important part about why we were there on Sunday is that was their primary for their federal elections. So one thing that we can take from that is it's a holiday in Colombia. So all of the government buildings are closed. Everybody's encouraged to go vote. And then they have all these big parties with the political parties. And actually, the hotel we were staying at happened to have one of the parties there. I did not know because we had to get up. But so a takeaway is, encourage voter participation and, make it a holiday, make it where people get out. Yeah, right. So, but that was interesting about the Sunday. This was more from Montserrat, just some more pictures that we took from that view. So this is facing south now from Montserrat. So it's like there's another picture I'll show here. I think it went out of order. But yeah. So this was like one of the weekend part portion of it. This is when we were kind of walking around Bogota now. This is actually a river that runs underneath the city. So they designed it to where the river is visible for people. This is also a major avenue. So one of the things that stood out was the aspect of vendors. So this avenue among many had vendors along it, and a lot of them were farmers. So we were just grabbing fruit off the stand. One fruit we ate was guama. It was it looks like a massive bean pod and it's like a massive seed in the middle, but it tastes like banana. But people are just buying fruit off. It's a way for people to make money, but it also is bringing in different types of food. You could eat all different types of fruit while you're walking around. But definitely was something of, could we do something like that here in Atlanta, promoting that small business aspect, but increasing access to sustainable food, materials, that kind of thing. These are some photos as we were walking around. Another thing that stood out was the creation of third places. It's not as green, unfortunately, but the reason why this is not green here is because this is their version of the Supreme Court, their mayoral office for Bogota, and then right behind this building is the presidential palace. So this was also on Sunday. So mass was happening. People were just out and about, and after they went and voted. But it was creating third spaces is important as we're thinking about sustainability because it's promoting walkability, it's promoting community. There is a form of a police force there that is there just to help provide direction, to help support for mental health. It's kind of like what they were trying to do, I think, in New York. But they're there to be a helping hand, not necessarily just enforcing the law, which was a nice concept. I think with everything else that's happening in the US right now, when we were walking by the presidential palace, it was more of curiosity. Because when one of our classmates asked the soldiers there where we were going, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you go this way." And it was like, "Oh, enforcement, people working for the people." But that was interesting. It was a nice concept to see that in another place. Some of these other pictures, this was at the top right, is at a library. The architect was very big on building circular spaces to move the flow of people better instead of creating rigid squares. And then this was like a small market that we were walking through before we went to lunch. It went out of order. I put it out of order. This is Monserrate from the view of the church. So this right here is the other church I was telling you about on the other mountain peak that kind of goes down. And so, but you can kind of see it's very busy. People were there at mass while we were there. They hosted at different times.
That's Bogota, far right.
This is Bogota right here. Yes. So 10,000 keep saying square feet. My goodness. I don't know why I've done that. 10,000 feet above sea level for mass. So, okay. So this is Lake Guatavita. This is about 2 hours outside of Bogota. Now, the reason why this is important is this lends to the legend of El Dorado. So right here is where it was the Muisca people the leader would walk in kind of covered in gold dust and walk into the water as kind of a anointment of becoming the new leader. So this is viewed as a womb in the culture. This is the mother. One of the also cool things that was our professors has said he's been here 20 times. That was the first time the sun came out. It was when we were there. Yeah. And so, but this is, so this person right here, he is Musaka. So we had a guide with us telling us about the history of it. And when they were talking about what the gold of El Dorado was, it was talking about food, specifically corn. The gold was sustenance, which you need to survive. And so we were talking about the importance of food, but yes, but also the importance of water. And that's kind of where this is. But it was a very beautiful place, very it was quiet. There was a field trip of students who came up with us, but
Lucas, they,
indigenous group.
are they descendants of the Incas or is this?
No, it's another group that's near there, but this is their land. They are trying to buy it, and so they maintain it. One of the also cool things is when Colombia did their constitution, in 1991 they enshrined indigenous rights. So the groups that we met with, the Musakat and the Kogi, which I'll get to when we get to Santa Marta, was they're trying to buy the land to still maintain it because there's that cultural connection, and they view it as not dismantling. Because before, I think you could walk through this area, but it was damaging a lot of the plant life, the animals. So they said no. So now you walk around it. And so, but how indigenous land management can be very important to conservation and preservation. So this was in Santa Marta. I'm gonna jump to the next one. So this was when we were horseback riding. This is also when we were visiting the Kogi people who are in the Tayrona National Park. So they actually have a village that you can go into. We had to go through a welcoming ceremony, which is why we were able to take pictures. But it was a very interesting and cool experience. But these were lemons that were near where we stayed at. So I think they were lemons. We took them off the tree and ate it. It was very, very tart. It was not a lemon. Thought it was, but oh my goodness. These are bananas that they were growing. So the Kogi people, we went to the village and we went up even further. And they actually were fleeing violence with FARC. And so that the land that they're on was actually another indigenous tribe's land. So that's where they're trying to stay at now. But they are growing different types of stuff. They're growing cacao, coffee, bananas, plantains, and I'll try to plot some of those pictures. They're growing cotton, all different types of things. But one of the cool things about the national park that is different from ours, you can only drive to a very certain extent. To get to where we had to go, you had to walk. And it makes you listen to different things. You're not smelling the gas fumes. Like if you've been to all of the other national parks in the US, you can drive through them, which understand makes it more accessible. But the aspect of no, you have to walk now to kind of get into it, or horseback riding, if that works. So this is actually some photos from the Kogi village. So these were some of their homes, some of their meeting places. So they have a meeting place for women and a meeting place for men to talk and discuss. This is a sugarcane press. It was broken at the time, unfortunately, but they pushed the sugarcane and it's pressed through. But they use everything that is on their land. So they actually make bags. And I don't have it with me. I guess I could have brought it. But the boys will shred the plant that's made with, and the girls will weave it. And then they make make the bags. They will use the plants there to dye them. It will take processes for it. And then they sell them so they can kind of keep things going into their community. These were just some photos from the beach that we were at on the Caribbean. So that day I told you we walked 10 miles. We walked from the top of the mountain down to the beach, and that was a long time. So getting to the ocean was really refreshing. But this was one of the more active sides of the ocean. So we weren't in this part of it, but I thought it was a really nice just place to kind of be out there. Just a photo of the UN badge when we got in to speak with the UN folks. And this is actually a picture of the entrance into Tayrona National Park. So there are jaguars. Didn't see any. I'm sure some saw us, but nothing happened. So that was a little different. Like, you know, I'm used to bears being here. But one of the other things that was really cool about the park was when we were walking, we heard this noise. It was just three of us, and then the Agostino, who's a mom, who's a leader of the Kogi people. And he was saying that when the leaves of a certain tree close, it makes a noise. But he was saying that's how the tree was saying hello to us. We said hello back. We said it first in English. We're like, oh, maybe we should say it in Spanish. Said hola. And the tree actually responded. So I'd like to think that nature was talking to us because we were all quiet for a second. Nobody was talking. It was just nice to hear the sounds. We also heard a spider that sounds like a cricket because we were wondering what it was. Didn't see it. I'm glad I did. But it was really, and I say this, but I'm sure you all people know that, but sometimes being silent in nature is a great way to listen and to hear what's going on around you. So it was really cool to kind of hear some of that. These were some cool photos of some birds. Unfortunately, these are all on my phone. I could not find my camera, but they all stopped and posed for a second so I could take the photo. I have no idea what these birds are. It wouldn't surprise me if some of them are actually from here who are just migrating down south. But they all stopped for a second, and it was just really cool to kind of to see them. It was early in the morning before we went to breakfast, and before we went hiking to the beach. But very, very beautiful. There were more, but I was like, these probably are the best. But
Those, what size, the box on that also?
no, they were probably like, yeah, they weren't like a normally big, but I was like, I don't know if y'all, and if anybody knows these. I was like, I definitely showed the yellow one because maybe that might stick out, but I'm gonna try to figure out what these are one day. These were some photos as we were hiking down to the beach. So there were some stories related to the trees that the Kogi shared. So there were certain trees we stopped by, like the story related to why the wood was used for a certain reason or why it wasn't used. This is an ant's nest. A lot of ants when we were walking. Because we were like, what is that? It's an ant. So I was like, oh. Nothing like really crazy. They're like maybe this big, bigger than what you would normally see here, but still pretty cool. This is a stone guardian in the Kogi culture. And I shared it mainly because, I'm geology background. But the Mamu leader, Agostino, told us he came and asked for safe travels. So whenever they leave, they ask for safe travels. We did get there safely. But it was a really cool, also like understanding the cultural background to some of the natural environment as we were going through it. These are some more photos in the air. So this is actually cacao. This is before it's roasted and becomes cocoa into chocolate. It tastes like banana. Felt like everything tasted like banana down there. But it was pretty good. It's a really big seed in the middle. But it was really good. But they took this was the Kogi people took it off one of their trees and let us eat it. These are another tree that we walked by that they shared, like the meaning of the wood. I could not remember what that was. And this was just a photo of just some of the path we were walking through. Just need to give you an idea, excuse me, how dense some of the forest is. But the walk path doesn't make it feel like that. Some more photos. This is as we were getting closer to the beach. We were like, yes. We were still like 20 minutes away from sea level when we were at this photo. This was another tree. This was I'm trying to remember. the story was this was a girl who wanted to be big and strong, but she wasn't, she was stubborn and her wood isn't good enough. But like that's what this, her wood is not used for construction or fire. But you can see a lot of people carved their name into the tree, but it was a little upsetting. Um, but very interesting. And then this is when we finally got down to the beach. Um, and then we went to so we were in the national park for 2 days. So we backpacked for 2 days, Thursday night and Friday night. Saturday, we got to like this cabin style area where we relaxed. We took horseback out of the park and then drove back into Santa Marta. So on Saturday, we went to this marine rescue center. So that's what these photos are from. We took a boat. They have like water taxis that you can take. And so they are working on restoration mainly with the manatees. So this is a dolphin. Like we got to sit on the stand where the trainers work with the dolphins. So we were like near the water playing with the dolphins. This dolphin just kept staring at me, like just looking at me. She was very curious, like literally for like 15 minutes, just bobbing up and down. As we got up, then she came up and let me touch her on her nose. Very sweet. The manatees, they are trying to rehabilitate them. I think this one right here is a little baby. I think it's either its mother abandoned him or his mother died, but they're trying to make him grow so he can go back out, but he likes coming back in and out. And then there are some sea turtles in here. There's also some massive stingrays. But it was a really cool experience of kind of seeing how they're kind of doing that, as well as it's an aquarium. Because they also have a lionfish issue. They're very invasive. So they're actually trying to work with restaurants to create dishes with them so people can eat them, working with the fishermen to catch them. There's not a lot of meat on them. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to taste them, but if you ever had lionfish, know that it's okay to eat it if you're on the East Coast. But very cool experience with the Marine Rescue Center. Oh, that's the last one. So, but yeah, it was just a kind of a handful of some photos I wanted to share, but there were definitely some takeaways that I think could be brought back here. Definitely with the transportation piece, I think with the voting piece, the national development aspect from a policy standpoint. And then I'm trying to see what else it was. It was a very and also just kind of, I think, remembering the social and cultural connections to the environment that we have, which was very interesting. We sat with a class at one of the universities and shared what are other words for water that we have heard. I shared the word that my sister, when she was a baby, she would call water wawa. So that was another name that we shared with it. But what are those connections to the natural environment? And one of the things I will share as it relates to water is it was I took a photo from one of the books that they gave us, but it says water is the melody and the rhythm of life. But I think another big point that I'll end with is that I think, and I'll say this even for myself, we separate ourselves from the natural environment. I'll even say, even as an environmentalist, because I'm in the city, I'm just going to go to the park and I'm still separating myself. But the food that we eat, the water that we drink, the air that we breathe, all of that is part of the natural environment. So therefore, we are a part of the natural environment. And kind of remembering what that means for us and also how we talk about it when we are advocating, when we are interacting, when we're trying to build community. That was probably the biggest kind of takeaway, just remembering that what connects you to this work. But I highly recommend you all travel to Colombia. It is an absolutely beautiful country, at least the parts that I got to see. The food was incredible. people were very, very friendly, and I also got to see people who looked like me in a whole other country. So, but yeah, but I'll leave it right there. I know I went way over. I'm so sorry. But questions?
What was the penetration for EVs on the streets that you observed? What's wrong?
It was so in the more of the wealthy area, they had like Teslas and BYD in the for sale. But a lot more in general, BYD, I'm forgetting the name of the car. It's a diamond. Um, but one of the things that we took an electric taxi from the airport, and the city of Bogota has a requirement that um, all taxis have to be electric by 2032.
That's great.
Yeah. So that was, but yeah, that's the DV piece.
And when you say that, is that federal or that's?
Citywide.
Citywide?
Mhm. So Colombia is different where they don't have like a federal system like us. It's more, is it unitary? I'm forgetting, blanking on the government type, but decisions happen at the Capitol and you do it. It's not like where we have Georgia and we can kind of go above and beyond, which, right, which has its ups and downs. So from a national level, if they're pushing environmental policy, everybody has to do it, but it might leave certain people behind if the administration changes. But yeah, it was a local decision. Like Bogota has a lot of political power because of how many people. It's the largest city, and that's where the Congress is divided population wise, and Bogota is where it's at.
Max and I traveled to Colombia a couple of years ago, perhaps. And in terms of, and in Bogota, I was so surprised at the transportation. Like you said, there are no freeways, but just avenues through the city. There were so many bicyclists on the road. It was shocking that no one seemed to get injured at all because people are on both sides of the road, just 3 and 4 deep bicyclists with everything else going on. Nobody honks their horn. Nobody seems to get riled up. It's amazing transportation in that city. Never seen anything like it.
Yeah, that definitely was a very interesting. I will say the honking, I'm laughing because we did hear honking. If you did not go the second it turned to green, you got a car honked at you. But you're right about the bicyclist thing. And I think that's part of the culture. This is where policy influences culture. If you implement a policy that is bicycle friendly, I think it will create a culture where people pay attention more. And then it becomes a part of just the everyday life. Because I would probably even say like the same thing with the Netherlands. Like it wasn't always like that, but people maneuver, they go around the bikes, they all are paying attention to pedestrians. But it's definitely a model that we can look to, like when the right policy is implemented, that the culture can kind of cultivate over time. Yeah.
You said earlier that the city had a Prop 30 plus on Millwood. What is that? What is the Prop 30 plus?
So COP is, I'm reading the acronym now, but it's like thank you.
Yeah.
Where international governments and sometimes all different types of stakeholders will get together to discuss environmental needs. And so usually there's one every year. But COP 30 plus is separate from the traditional COP, whereas this is only like 60 countries getting together, but it's Colombia and the Netherlands hosting it and Santa Marta on the coast. But they want countries who are not just going to talk about the policy. They're talking about like, okay, how do we implement this? How do we find the financing to make this happen? Where are the minerals and resources going to come from to build these solar panels and wind? And it's actually next month, April 24th through the 29th. But I think it should be on the website though. Should be a website somewhere.
it's noted here in our country whenever someone is elected who has indigenous background, indigenous blood, do the folks down there have a better record or better way of getting represented in the government there? Are they more visible somehow?
I think it depends on the administration. So I'll say for this administration right now, the UN ambassador is from an indigenous culture. So someone from their indigenous culture is representing their country at the UN level. Their vice president is Afro-Colombian. So I would say this is purely from an American lens and not knowing Colombian politics, that from a representation standpoint, it's very interesting to see that. Which is why I share what I shared of to be going to a country to see other people who look like me. Colombia is similar to the US, where I think percentage wise of like Spanish heritage and background, Afro-Colombian background, and then the indigenous background. There's also they use the term peasant, but it's their that's where the economics come in. There's that cultural perspective to it. Not every group is perfect. I would not say that, but one of the things I noticed is there was some representation, but seeing the representation in the art. That's part of the reason why I put that picture up at the very beginning of this mural, because there was one of many different people in one mural of different backgrounds that reflected the people of Colombia. Of course, by all means, not perfect. There's issues, but I think at the very least we can recognize that we can see ourselves either in our elected officials or in our media is something that we should be able to strive for.
When you were in Santa Marta, when you went up in the mountains above there, Kogi, was that the name of the people?
Kogi, Cogi.
Kogi. Are they the ones with the white one?
Yeah, let me see. I think I had a picture of. I thought, wow, I did have a photo. I did have a photo of, but yes, they had the white clothing. I'm actually going to see.
Because the mountain people, they got sheep and goats.
We didn't see any of that, but they do grow a lot of cotton. And there actually is somebody there called who's the weaver who makes the clothes for everyone. Goodness. Okay, this is gonna be difficult trying.
I'm curious about the, illegal, right,
Okay, illicit drugs, yeah.
right, illicit drugs and the political politics of that. You mentioned that there was some cooperation between indigenous people and those that are running.
They fled to get away from the violence, yeah.
Oh, they did, okay, so
It's not cooperation.
it's not.
No. I will say that Colombia was getting about 440 million through USAID, and that funding was supposed to go to help create pathways for farmers to not grow coca, to be turned into cocaine. It's not the plant itself that's the issue, it's the processing of it.
Yeah.
And but why our foreign aid is important, because the demand for cocaine is in the United States and Europe. So you can destroy all the supply that you want, but if somebody's trying to make a living and they see how much they can make on a very small plot, when you're competing against these massive agriculture companies, a person, we shouldn't, what's the word I'm trying to say? We shouldn't criminalize people trying to survive. And so there is, I think Bolivia has done it to where they have more of a staggered system. Like, you can still get money, but you'll get more if you grow other crops. And that's where like land distribution is a part of the peace agreement. But I will say from the illicit drug aspect, yes, we should address the supply, but it doesn't do anything if there's still a demand. People will still make for it. And that's why I do believe we have a role to play. And if we want to see that go away, USAID was funding to do that. And that also goes to not just the US, but Europe too. But that's it. Not everybody wants it, not everybody likes it. It's just unfortunately the reality. So, oh, and actually with that, it is 8 o'clock. I have to get to class. But I want to thank you all for your time. And I will hope to have more conversations with y'all about it. It was great. And I see there's stuff in the chat. Okay.
Betty, do you have a question?
Okay. Well, I'll
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
It looks like Betty's talking.
Oh,
Oh, was it through the lap? This thing?
this is Betty. Can you hear me?
Betty, are you asking me a question?
I was just saying thank you. Uh-oh.
Can you type it in? Okay.
That gives us, so.
Yeah, if yeah, I'll share the presentation so y'all can see the photos. But yeah, we're gonna say thank y'all.
Is it DAPA program?